This one is called the sacred tree. The useful declines to be used, whereas the useless asks to be used. Once upon a time, a well-known carpenter named Shish, accompanied by his young and impressionable apprentice, was traveling through the untamed countryside, often taking shortcuts in order to reach the state of Chi on time. Their travels at one point led them to the shady circle, where they observed the sacred Li tree in the temple dedicated to the god of earth. The tree was immensely huge, so large in fact that it provided shelter to a herd of several thousand cattle and still left room for more. It was 100 spans in girth, towering up 80 or 90 feet over the hilltop before it branched out. Countless admiring crowds, with their faces turned up, stood there gazing in awe at this miracle on earth. The apprentice too had halted briefly and fixed his eyes also on this magnificence, thinking how a dozen boats could be cut out of it. He hastened his steps to catch up to his master, who had continued on his way quite unconcerned. Bit puzzled, he addressed his master tentatively. "Master, in all this time I've been fortunate enough to have handled and ads in your service, I have never seen such a superb example of timber. How was it that you, master, cared not pause a step to even perfunctorily observe it?" "Forget about it. It's hardly worth the mention." The master shrugged smugly. Observing the puzzled look on the stubborn apprentice's face, however, he relented. "The tree is good for nothing. Made into a boat, it would sink. Into a coffin, it would rot. Into a furniture, it would break easily. Into a door, it would sweat. Into a pillar, it would be worm-eaten. Despite its size, the wood is of no quality and therefore of no use. That's why it has survived to attain its present age." By dusk of the 5th day, the carpenter and his apprentice had finally reached home. After unburdening themselves of their luggage and washing up, they partook of a satisfying repast. That evening, as he snuggled cozily under the quilts, the carpenter had an unsettling dream. He dreamt that the displeased spirit of the tree appeared to him and spoke to him harshly as follows: "Your arrogance is unconscionable. What is it, tell me, you intend to compare me with? Is it with fine-grained wood? Consider the pear, the orange, the pomelo, the cherry apple, and all other fruit-bearers. As soon as their fruit ripens, they are stripped and treated with such indignity. The great boughs are snapped off and the small ones scattered abroad. Thus, do these trees by their own value cause injury to their own lives? Sadly, they cannot fulfill their allotted span of years, but expire prematurely, all because they are destroyed for bringing forth the admiration of the world. Thus it is with all things. In view of this, I've strove long and hard to appear useless. Even so, many a time I had a close brush with the peril of being cut down. My wits and my ways, however, in the end succeeded in deterring them from their aim, and so I endured and grew to these heights, being only useful to myself. My kindness now propels me to impart on you few facts. In your pitifully brief human history, Tse Chi of Nan Po was once traveling on the hill of Shang when he chanced upon a huge tree that greatly astonished him. In his mind, he counted that 1,000 chariot teams of 4 horses could seek shelter under its shade. Reining on his horse under it and pointing, he therefore shouted, "What sort of tree is this? Surely it must bear an unusual fine timber." Then, as he looked more closely, he saw that its branches were too crooked for rafters. And looking down, he noted that the tree's twisting loose grain made it valueless for coffins. Reaching, he plucked the leaf and tasted it. At once his face crinkled, for it took the skin off his lips. The odor, meanwhile, was too strong that it would make a man insensate for several days. "Ah," said she, "this tree is really good for nothing. That is how it has attained this size." A spiritual man might well follow its example of uselessness. You may also recall that in the state of Sung there is a land belonging to the Qing where thrive the catop, the cedar, and the mulberry, such as are of 1 span or so in girth are cut down for monkey cages. Those of 2 or 3 spans are harvested for the beams of fine houses. Those of 7 and 8 spans are cut down for the jointless sides of rich men's coffins. Alas, they do not fulfill their allotted span of years, but perish under the axe all too young. Such is the misfortunes that overtake the worthy. In contrast, for sacrifices to the river god, neither pigs with high snouts, nor bulls with white foreheads, nor men suffering from piles can be used, for every soothsayer regards these as inauspicious. To the wise, however, these are regarded extremely auspicious, if only to themselves. I'm reminded of an account of a certain hunchback named Su. His jaws touched his navel, his shoulders were higher than his head, his neck bones stuck out towards the ultimate sky, his viscera were turned upside down, his buttocks were where his ribs should have been. Yet he lived rather comfortably. By sifting rice or tailing or washing, he earned his keep and achieved enough to support a family of 10. When the orders for conscription came, whether for the army or for public works, the hunchback walked about unconcerned among his peers, for his deformity excluded him from all such. Meanwhile, when the donations of grain for the disadvantaged and the disabled were handed out, the hunchback received as much as 3 measures, and when firewood was allotted, 10 faggots. If physical deformity was thus sufficient to preserve his body until the end of his days, how much more should a moral and mental deformity avail? Alas, it's a sad fact that mountain trees invite their own cutting down. Lamp oil invites its own burning up. Lacquer can be used where the tree is scraped. Cinnamon bark can be eaten. Therefore the tree is cut down. All men know the utility of useful things, but they do not know the utility of utility. As you and I are both created things, I ponder on the soundness of this good-for-nothing fellow, you, who is in imminent danger of death, passing so demeaning a remark on the supposed good-for-nothing tree. The subsequent morning, the carpenter awakened with a start, covered with perspiration, and sat up on his bed for a while collecting his thoughts. His mind fastened just then on the well-known fact that when Confucius was in the Qi state, The eccentric Chiu passed his door, saying, O Phoenix, how has thy virtue fallen? Wait not for the coming years, nor hanker back to the past. When the right principles prevail on earth, prophets will fulfill their mission. When the right principles prevail not, they will but preserve themselves. At the present day, they are but trying to keep out of jail. The good fortunes of this world are light as feathers, yet none estimates them at their true value. The misfortunes of this life are weighty as the earth, yet none knows how to keep out of their reach. No more, show off your virtue. Beware, and move cautiously on. O Brumbles, would not my steps I pick my way about hurt not my feet? Later on that day, when the carpenter Shish heard his apprentice exclaim, if the tree aimed at uselessness, how was it that it became a sacred tree? Hush, he responded gravely. Keep quiet. I was wrong. It merely took refuge in the temple to escape from the abuse of those who do not appreciate it. Had it not become sacred, how many would have wanted to cut it down? Moreover, the means it adopts for safety are different from that of others, and to criticize it by ordinary standards would be far wide of the mark. A lesson was well learned. The end.